It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Sally Sachs. We're here in Har Homa in Yerushalayim. And Sally, if you can just mention a bit about where you came from and your family's history.
Thanks, Les. Nice to say hello to everybody, and especially with this video, the first one that we're making. We as the whole South African community are Litvakkers. My parents came from, my mom from Riga, my dad from Pushelat, which is 20 kilometers from Ponevezh, the famous city. They emigrated to South Africa in 1930 and 1933, and then we grew up in South Africa, and Gita and I, we got married in 1976. We made Aliyah in 1991 with our 4 kids. We have a strange story, and that is that Gita's mom and my mom actually knew each other. My mother actually babysitted her on the boat coming from Europe, which we only found out when my mom went to meet Gita's mom in Cape Town after we got engaged.
No,
and then
before we were engaged.
Before we okay, it doesn't matter. Before we were engaged, and they were sitting around, and then under the coffee table was a picture. Excuse me. And my mother happened to look at the picture, and she said, "Look, I'm in this picture." So Gita's mom said, "What are you talking about? I'm also in the picture." So it works out that my mom really looked after them and babysat them, and they didn't know it. So it was the most amazing event, and thank God we got married and we made Aliyah, as I said, in 1991 with our 4 children. All of us are living in Israel. We have 20 grandchildren, with 1 on the way. And thank God all the kids are doing well and settled into Israel. Okay, I studied at Jewish Government School. I started.
Was this in Joburg?
In Joburg, yes, in Johannesburg. And then I went to Wits and did accountancy. And I opened up my own business called Snapprint, which I think most of the community knew about at that stage.
Sorry, can I just ask, when you were at Wits, were you involved in student politics?
Yes, sure. I was very much involved in student politics in SOJUS, the South African Jewish Students Association. And we had a great hand in the visit of Robert Kennedy. If you recall that Robert Kennedy came to South Africa, and we were involved in his visit to a limited extent. But I remember being with him when he went on the roof of the car to say hello to everybody, that famous story. Just before we left South Africa, or not just before, a while before, but in 1975, we opened our business Snapprint with a partner, an Israeli partner. And a few days later, the next day, we had the Protter case. The Protter case was David Protter, who decided to take over the embassy. It's a whole long story.
It was the Israeli embassy?
The Israeli embassy.
Near the Carlton Center?
Near the Carlton Center. The Israeli embassy was in Fox Street, in a building, and also had the Japanese embassy there. And I happened to have been the negotiator the whole night to bring Protter down with Van den Berg, General Van den Berg, and Viljoen, Roy Roos Viljoen from the police force. And we happened to speak to Botha at that stage, not Pik Botha, PW Botha, the Prime Minister. Rabin spoke to him because they were going to blow up the building. And we knew if they're going to blow up the building, they're going to kill all our people. Our people were in a safe. Protter locked them up in a safe. He killed the security guard, unfortunately. And I was the last one to come to the embassy. I had a little beeper in those days, no telephones. And it didn't stop ringing that I got to come back to the embassy, urgent, urgent, urgent. Eventually I got back to the embassy. We had a very important visitor here from Israel, one of the Shin Bet guys who came to check our systems, and he decided to fire Protter, and that started the whole business. Protter, of course, was convicted for 25 years for the murder of the security guard Raviv, Zichrono Livracha, and Charles Protter, his brother, was also jailed for a shorter period of time for helping or being involved in this sad event.
Do you know why they did it? What spurred them on to?
Yeah, I know very much why they did it. Excuse me, because they fired this security man that came out to South Africa, fired David Protter. Protter thought he was the kingpin of the whole security system of Israel, which he wasn't. But he did things that he shouldn't have done. He fiddled around with the fax machine, he fiddled around with the telephones, and in the capture of the embassy, all this came to play, where he used only communicate by fax and communicate not on the telephone and everything, and this sort of ticked him off. I remember we had a visit of the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra, first and last time. I was allocated to help them with their security, and I worked very closely with the security guys involved in the orchestra. But David Protter, somehow or the other, got involved as well, and he ran around with a Mercedes-Benz with an alarm and a red light on his roof. And in the end, we found out that it wasn't his car. But he took us through all the red robots. So that was that event.
The secretary.
I grew up in Bnei Akiva. I started a bit late, but I grew up in Bnei Akiva, became chairman of Bnei Akiva for many years. I was the Rosh Machaneh for 6 years, the youngest Rosh Machaneh that they've ever had, until I came in. We used to use the older guys to be our Rosh Machaneh, the Vatikim of the Bnei Akiva, who used to take the responsibility. And then when I became chairman, my executive, my Hanala, decided that we ourselves should take the camp in hand. My last camp was 700 kids. Wow. We bought the campsite. I bought the campsite with money from the Federation.
Was this in Hartenbos?
In Hartenbos, yes, where it is today, with Brian Goodkin at that stage. And we got a good mapula from the Federation leadership, Zionist Federation leadership, but at the end of the day, this was the right thing to do, and today the campsite is a great campsite and worth an untold sum of money.
And you know, they had the largest camp this last December. It was the largest camp they've ever had.
1,100 kids and people. So we until my day we had 400, and then my last camp in Hartenbos was 700 kids, which was also. We took over the town basically. Hartenbos was a small town. We came there. Our orders for vegetables and fruit and that stuff, they never did in a year what they did with us in 3 weeks. And the bakery, we had a kosher bakery there, or the bakery wasn't kosher, but we checked it out and we got permission to use it. And they did business with us with chalot and rolls and daily supplies. In the 3 weeks that they did business with us, they never did in the whole year. So that was that. I then became vice chairman and chairman of the Mizrahi movement, and also chaired their executive, and we undertook certain events. We bought our own house, the Mizrahi, which is in Glen Hazel today, and became the Mizrahi Center. And then, of course, I became the chairman of the Zionist Federation, for a number of years. And
were you one of the youngest chairmen of the
I was the youngest chairman of the Federation, yes. I was the youngest chairman of the Zionist Federation, and I chaired it for also, I think, about 6 years. I was vice chairman for 3 or 4 years, and then I was chairman for 6 years, and the Federation became the predominant body in South African Jewry. And as chairman of the Federation, we visited on a number of times de Klerk, President de Klerk. We met with Mandela when he was released from jail, with Nelson Mandela. And also we met with Barham du Plessis, the Minister of Finance, because of the sanctions against Israel. They didn't want to let the money out of South Africa from the IUA campaigns. We went to see him, and we managed to get permission from him to send out the money, which was a big event. And then, of course, we also bought a house in West Street, which became the Mizrahi Shul, and is still operating today as a shul, not Mizrahi Shul, but as a shul, run by Mizrahi people. Ronnie Kaplan and his brother Alan run the shul, and that's a great event. So from there, what happened was we were on holiday in Cape Town, and I got a phone call from some of my friends here in Israel asking me if I wanted to take the job of the Director General of the World Mizrahi. World Mizrahi at that stage was in trouble, financial trouble, and had fired most of the staff. And they asked me if I would wish to take over the job and help to resuscitate the Mizrahi. So I flew back. I left Gita and the children in Cape Town, one of my few holidays. that I had, and I flew to Israel and got elected as the world director of Mizrahi. That was in, I think, October of 1990. And then we came on Aliyah in August of 91. I had to go back to South Africa. I phoned Gita, I said, pack your bags, we're going. She was very excited. Then I phoned her the next day and I said, unpack the bags, we're not going. Because the Americans wanted to put up one of their people as a candidate. But my guys, the guys who were pushing for me, said, okay, we'll run an election. Let's see what happens. We'll run an election, the worst can happen, you lose. And once they saw that we were determined to run an election and they saw all the support that I had, they withdrew their candidature and I was unanimously elected as director. Then, of course, I phoned Gita and I said, pack the bags again. And then we started, excuse me, then we started our plans. I had to come back, I had to sell the business. We had a, Baruch Hashem, a thriving business at that stage.
It was a printing business?
The printing business, yes, Snap Print.
And how were you involved with the Carlton Centre?
With the Carlton Centre, well, it's a short story. What happened was I was sitting next to Gerald Leisner at one of the Onik Shabbat at the Glen Hazel Shul. And we were talking. He was chairman of the Board of Deputies, I was chairman of the Zionist Federation. And we had a lot to talk about. And then he turned around to me and said, listen, do you want to take over a business? I said, yeah, what type of business? He said, the Carlton Centre, the viewing point of the 50th floor of the Carlton Centre. Yeah. So I said, yeah, it sounds good. Let me look at it. So the next few days I spent looking at the prospect. I came back to Gerald and I said, Gerald, I'll take it. Unfortunately for me, we redid it, they redid it. It cost them a hell of a lot of money and they refurbished it and put in carpets and put in platforms and everything like that. I wanted to put a platform in mid-air. But in those days, the engineering side of events was not available, so we couldn't do that. But I ran it for a number of years, and we attracted thousands of people. The problem is, once I signed the contract, 3 days later, there was this bomb in Main Street, if you recall, at a bus stop. And that people just stayed away from town because of that. So,
state of emergency, no?
And then, I think, the South African government declared a state of emergency for a while. And people stopped coming to the Carlton Centre, so it was a very difficult period for me, but we managed to turn it around, and it became a very big attraction centre. Every tourist group came to the Carlton Centre.
So, sorry, I must just mention, it was the tallest building, I think, in Africa even at the one time.
Absolutely.
And you had a mezuzah on your office.
Yes.
So I think that's the highest mezuzah in Africa. I remember the mezuzah.
Yeah, I certainly put a mezuzah on my office, I put a mezuzah on the door there, and we started running the Carlton Centre. We had events, we had, I remember bringing from the zoo a chimpanzee to attract the kids, and all the kids came in the holidays. I wanted to bring a little elephant, but they wouldn't allow it. So, but anyway, it was great, and we had a lot of, enormous amount of people visiting. As I say, anybody came to Johannesburg, that was one of the compulsory stops, the Carlton Centre.
So it was a panoramic view of Johannesburg?
Panoramic, you had a 4 sides panoramic view, absolute panoramic view of Johannesburg, and you could see for miles. And of course it was, as you say, Les, the tallest building in South Africa at that stage. Okay, and then as Director General of Mizrahi, I came into the Mizrahi movement. And as I said, the Mizrahi movement was bankrupt, the World Mizrahi Centre, and most of the staff had been fired. So I came in and started from scratch. First with Mr. Kurt Rothschild, we had to raise the money to make it float again. I was greatly supported by a lot of people, I must say. First of all, Kurt Rothschild from Canada, then Dr. Joseph Burg, world leader and a minister in the government of Israel for 35 years, and especially Zvulun Hammer, who was very happy that I had been appointed, and after he was Minister of Education for many years in the government of Israel.
He was in the NRP, the National Religious Party.
He was the National Religious Party, yes, the younger guard as they called him at that stage. And all these guys really gave me a lot of support, Duvduvani and others. And slowly,
I think Kurt is still active. He still has his office.
Yeah, we just Kurt Rothschild is amazing. Today he's our president. In those days he was our chairman, and I worked with him very closely. Every day we were on the phone from Canada. And just 2 weeks ago, we celebrated his 99th birthday.
It's amazing.
Which is amazing. He comes to work every day.
And he has an office in the Mizrahi.
He has an office in our building. We gave him an office. He comes to work every day. He sends out faxes and emails and the whole day. His body's a bit weak, but his head is functioning exceptionally well. 99 years old. So we managed to turn it around. And
sorry, where did you live when you came to Israel?
We lived in Kochavi Yair.
You first came to Kochavi Yair.
Yes. I was responsible for, I think, 3 Garinim. One Garin went to Alon Shvut, the second Garin went to Efrat, and the third Garin to Kochavi Yair. We had a plot in Efrat because I was chairman of the Garin, but I wasn't ready at that stage. It was long before I got the offer to be the Director General. We weren't ready to come on Aliyah. I had a business, and we had to give up the plot because one of the conditions was that we built together with everybody else, so that they wouldn't finish building and then all of a sudden somebody else comes and starts building and messes up all their gardens and everything else. Creates a lot of dust and rubble. So we gave up our plot, and then I became chairman of the Garin for Kochavi Yair, and at the end of the day we had 120 families from South Africa came on Aliyah and live in Kochavi Yair. In the beginning we had 600 families, but Kochavi Yair took shape. If you look at it, the first Garin, the first group of guys in Kochavi Yair, Shlav Aleph as we call it, bought their houses for $91,000.
Wow.
The second Shlav, which we joined, with Shlav Bet, the houses already cost $170,000. And the third stage were $300,000. So all the balance, only those that really got in the beginning, and Slav Bet, I think there were a few that went to Slav Gimel, but most of them pulled out after that. Of the 600 families, as I say, 120 made Aliyah, and we lived in Kochavi Yair for 16 years. And then Gita was pushing me all the time to move to Jerusalem because I worked in Jerusalem and the roads became terribly difficult. It took me an hour and a half sometimes one way. So I was spending between 3 and 4 hours a day on the road, back and forth. And eventually she said, that's it, we're coming. And we decided to sell up and come to Jerusalem. And Baruch Hashem.
Once the kids were married.
And sorry, Limos, you were also chairman of Telfed?
Yes, I was chairman of Telfed for 2 years. I was very involved in Telfed, coming from South Africa as the chairman of the Zionist Federation. I had a lot of contacts with Telfed. We gave them a lot of support. We gave them a lot of money. We helped them with projects and everything like that. And I became chairman of Telfed for 2 years. It was also a difficult period because I had to run up and down from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv to Ranana to attend meetings. We had a lot of meetings. We had, again, a lot of activities. We hosted a lot of guests, and that also became a burden. But I'm still involved in Telfed. I'm still on the executive. I'm on the board of governors of Telfed. I represent the Mizrahi organization on 20 different bodies and amutot, whether it's the Jewish Agency, the World Zionist Organization, B'nai Akiva, Tzomet, which is the technological arm of the religious communities, Mishav, which is the building arm for religious communities as well, and a whole lot of other bodies where I represent them. And I'm responsible for I also sit on the board of governors of the Jewish Agency. I've been there for now 27, 28 years as a member, and I run a lot of the activities, and also I look after our people. I see that we got a representation at all these meetings and that our people attend, whether it's to do with the national institutions, the Jewish Agency, as I said, the World Zionist Organization. We are represented on all the committees, and we try and see that we give support and substance. Keren Kayemet Israel, for example, as well, give support to religious projects as well as non-religious projects, to help our people in various commitments.
And sorry, can I ask, you had a connection, you were mentioning earlier, about Zorach Vahaftig. Could you just explain how you got to meet him and your interaction with him?
Yes, well, Zorach Vahaftig was one of the leaders of the Mabdal, those days the Mabdal party. I met all the leaders of the Mabdal party. I used to have regular meetings with Zvul and Hama. When Dr. Burg finally retired from Parliament, he became the president of World Mizrahi, and he had an office in our building as well. So I was with him, I worked with him every day. And we did a number of tours overseas whenever he was invited in. He wanted me to accompany him. And I did on many, many occasions to many countries, whether it was England, the United States, France, South Africa. I brought him out twice to South Africa for Yom Yerushalayim. Brought out the chief rabbi to South Africa, Rabbi Goren, for Yom Yerushalayim. Great guests. We had about 2,500 people at each of these functions. The hall and the shul was overflowing with people. So I worked with them. And Zerach Baraftik, as I say, I dedicated one of her books. I published a book every year on religious Zionism by various authors and writers who published that. And one of the books I dedicated to him. He was a very prominent leader of the religious party, the Mavdal, the National Religious Party, and he was well known. When I went to give him the book, to show him the book that was printed in his honor, I had to speak loud, as his daughter told me, because he didn't hear too well. He wasn't interested in hearing about the book or the honor that he was getting. He wanted to know what I was doing in Mizrahi. So I started telling him a little bit. He said, "Nana Tachlis, what are you doing every day? How do you work?" So I had a great opportunity to speak with him, and it was really significant meeting all these people. I brought out Rabbi Lau when I was chairman of the Aliyah department, for example, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau. I brought him to South Africa twice, and he did a great job. He attracted enormous audiences. He spoke over 14 times in a short week of visits. And we
I was in one of his talks where it was a group of rabbis, and you could hear a pin drop. You really could. It was,
yes. People
were spellbound.
He's great. He was great. In the 14 lectures that he gave over this week, he didn't repeat himself once. It was amazing. I accompanied him on every one of these meetings, and I told him I've never heard. I know Abba Eben, for example, used to give the same speech over and over again wherever he went. Rabbi Lau didn't repeat himself once. It was amazing. And the stories he told and everything was just unbelievable. And also I had a free entrance to the Knesset because we were meeting in the Knesset. I was on the Siyah of the National Religious Party for a while. And I was privileged to know most of these great leaders of the religious Zionist movement in Israel and in the world. Of course, I met various branches. I had the privilege of attending. I think I went to all the countries. I used up 6.5 passports.
Wow.
In my travels, and I visited most of our branches around the world, whether it's in Australia, whether it was in South America, Brazil, of course England many times, America many times, and all over the place. So I opened up a few branches. At that stage, we have some of our movements are doing great work in Canada. I was a few times, for example, in Vienna. Vienna has a special story. Our building in Vienna is dated from 1969. 1694, I think, the building. And then they decided pushing from our movement together with the city council of Vienna. We're in Judenplatz. We're the central building in Judenplatz where they gathered all the Jews and sent them to the various camps. Our people with the city council decided to put up a very big monument in front of our building in Judenplatz in Vienna. It was a solid block of cement. I think it's a terrible monument. But
it's with books, inverted books.
Inverted books, yeah. And the story behind it exactly should be that the book was never finished. The book remains open. And the Jewish people continue to survive. So when they put up this monument, they disturbed the foundations. And our building almost collapsed. Broke the foundations, but what they did was they found the shul of the Or Zarua.
It's now a monument. It's
from 350 years ago.
You go underground and you see those Zarua.
And on one of our tours, we went and davened mincha there while they were still doing the excavations. So between all the planks and the building material, we managed to get to the shul. Today, of course, you get there, it's a museum, as Les is saying.
It's part of the Vietnamese
You get there,
Jewish
it's part
Museum.
of the Jewish Museum run by the city council, not by Mizrahi, but in Mizrahi's building. And Mizrahi gets the revenue from it, which is amazing. So they redid our building. Today we have a new building. 1696 was the date, actually. So we have a new building, and the Mizrahis there, the B'nai Kibbutz are there. We have a shul in the building, and we have meeting space. I've been there a few times, but that was an amazing event. And I traveled with a lot of ministers besides Dr. Borg to various countries for their functions. For example, Canada has a very big Yom Ha'atzmaut function. In the shul, they also have about 2,000 people, 2,500 people. And I went with a number, Dr. Borg, of course, and Zvulun Hammer, and F.E.A. Tam, all ministers, Yoska Shapira, ministers. Who?
Yitzhak Levi,
Rabbi Yitzhak Levi,
Shaul Yalom.
and Shaul Yalom, all ministers in the government of Israel. With Rabbi Yitzhak Levi, I went to France on a number of times. We have a big community in France. We have our own building. We have our own office in France as well. And I think I must have been there 6 or 7 times, if not more, with him.
And you went on numerous tours, Mizrahi tours to...
Yeah, what we decided once with our branches, once we had these active branches, I decided that we should visit them, not just me, to bring other people. So we started the Mizrahi Heritage Tours and finally did 16 tours. Some were to our branches. For example, we had a tour to South Africa with our Mizrahi guys. We had a very big Shabbat in Glen Hazel with all the guys for the tour, and the tours came mainly from the United States, England, Australia, and Canada. Those were our main clients that came, and we had a great tour in South Africa, as we did in all other parts of the world. Some of them were just normal heritage tours to see the Jewish community, always to see the Jewish community. For example, in India, we got there a few days after this terrible tragedy in Mumbai of the bombing and killing of the rabbi and his wife. And we managed to visit the spot and say Kaddish there at the spot. And then we went to other places. In India also we have a community in Thani, a place called Thani, which is the most amazing place. The Sassoon family supported the community in Thani, and they have a school called the Sassoon School. Today the school is mainly Indian kids, but very few Jewish kids. The Jewish kids don't pay school fees, and the Indian kids do pay school fees. But at one stage it was mainly Jewish, and the opposite, mainly Jewish with a few Indian kids. But the school's still called the Sassoon School and still funded by the foundation of the Sassoon family. So these are some of the exciting events that I've had.
And Zimbabwe.
We went to, in South Africa, once in South Africa, of course, as chairman of the Federation, I travelled around South Africa to all the centres, Port Elizabeth, Durban, Cape Town, Johannesburg, East London, Pietermaritzburg, wherever there was a Jewish community, I visited them, and we visited Bulawayo and Rhodesia in those days, to Rhodesia, Harare today, Salisbury and Rhodesia. And I spoke to the community. They had a very big community Shabbat for me. I had a big dinner on Friday. In Bulawayo I also addressed the community. I went with my wife Gita, and we were really, everybody received us so well. It was incredible. So that's part of...
And the solidarity tour, the rabbis? 1990.
In 1990, with the Scud missile crisis, we decided that we'd come on a solidarity tour. So with Basil Platsky in South Africa, we decided to put the tour together. Basil was also a member of Mizrahi on the Zionist Federation. And we thought, well, let's see who comes. At the end of the day, we spoke to Chief Rabbi Harris, Zichrono Livracha, and they put together a rabbi's tour. And we had, I think we had 43 people who came here during the Scud War.
To show solidarity.
To show solidarity with Israel. We were welcomed at the airport, and we were each given gas masks at the airport. That was our arrival in those days, which is incredible, because if you look at it, you arrive in a country and after you clear customs, you line up to get your gas mask, which we had to carry around with us right throughout the tour. our muzzle is that right throughout our tour, that was the 1 week where they didn't have any Scud missiles. The day we left, they had the last Scud missile, which hit Ramat Gan.
I remember.
And the one person died from a heart attack and not from being near the bomb. So we did that as well. And that was a great tour. I brought, of course, many other solidarity tours to Israel. I think at the end of the day, through the wars, I had over 63 solidarity tours that we brought to Israel. Because I put out a challenge to each country once it happened, and I said, we would welcome you to Israel. Come and support us, come and show your support. You're always talking about Israel and helping Israel. Come and physically show your support. And I must say, each country, whether it was England, Canada, Australia, South Africa, not New Zealand, South Africa, or Vienna, Europe, England, they all put together a solidarity tour. And over the years, we brought 63 tours, which is amazing. Many of those people who came on the tours made Aliyah afterwards.
And sorry, can I mention, when you were head of the Zionist Federation in South Africa, I think that time the community was very, very unified. I think you had an amazing ability to have all the youth movements work together. And
yes, just today Gita brought out an album that was in our storeroom downstairs that I was looking through, and as a matter of fact, one of the letters mentions exactly the point that you're saying. At the end of the day, Baruch Hashem, managed to work with everybody. We put together everybody under one umbrella, under the Zionist Federation. We were, as I said earlier on, the predominant body, and we put together a whole committee of people. First of all, I brought in the Women's Zionist Council, which weren't members of our finance committee, they wanted to be, and other committees. And we worked with all the youth movements, and as well we worked with the Reform Rabbi Asabi, who was on the executive, so they were appointed there. We worked with them as well, and everybody under one roof. It was all under joint. We had a unified stand on most things, nearly everything. We supported, our policy was to support the government of the day, whether it was a Likud government, whether it was a Labour government. We supported the government of the day in all their actions and showed strong support. And yeah, it worked exceptionally well. As you could see from all the activities, Yom Ha'atzmaut, we drew a crowd of 15,000 people.
And it was very inclusive of all the branches, all the youth movements.
Of everybody.
Yeah.
Inclusive of everybody. As a matter of fact, on the Solidarity Tour, we had 3 rabbis from the Chabad in South Africa, led by Rabbi Yossi Goldman. They came with us, and we all fitted in well together. It was incredible.
And sorry, can I ask, when you came to Israel, and having been Telfed and Mizrahi, which prime ministers did you meet here in Israel, and who did you become close with?
Well, I think I met them all. I met Yitzhak Rabin, Zichrono Livracha. I met Yitzhak Shamir, Zichrono Livracha. Bibi Netanyahu accompanied us on our solidarity tour. He attended. I have pictures. I'll give you pictures of those. He attended on our solidarity tour. Who else was?
Menachem Begin, did you?
Menachem Begin I met as well. Harry Hurwitz was then the advisor to the Prime Minister, so Shamir we met on a few times, and I have a letter from Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. We went to see him after a very close relationship with President de Klerk and the South African government at that stage. And I went to see Mr. Shamir, and on behalf of the South African jury, we asked him to lift the sanctions that Israel had imposed on South Africa itself. And 2 weeks after we visited with Mr. Shamir, I led a delegation with Julius Weinstein and others, Herbie Rosenberg. 2 weeks after our visit, I got a letter from Mr. Shamir, which I still have today, saying that the government of Israel has decided to lift sanctions against the government of South Africa.
That was mainly because of the Jewish community.
Only because of the Jewish community. And he had the courage to do it. Israel was the first country to lift sanctions against South Africa, the first country. And Yitzhak Shamir had the strength and had the courage to do that. And he said he did it for the Jewish community. The Jewish community is in danger, he's ready to help us, which was amazing. So I really met them all. I
And
met
Ehud Barak was in Kochav Yair. He was an
Ehud
ambassador.
Barak was in Kochav Yair. We went to his house on a few occasions as well. He lived 3-4 streets down from us.
Shaul Mofaz.
And Shaul Mofaz was in Kochav Yair. Uzi Dayan, the deputy chief of the army, was in Kochav Yair. Miki Aitan, a minister in the government. Ra'im, also a member of parliament for the Likud. A lot of people. And we had I had contact with these people most of the time. Whenever I needed them, I could call on them, and we did. I also met, excuse me, I also met Chaim Herzog, and I'll give you the picture. I have a picture of him where he welcomed the Jewish Agency to its 13th anniversary. I was chosen at that stage to present the credentials to the Jewish Agency Assembly, which was a very prestigious and wide body, mainly attended by Americans, but people from all over the world. I think about 169 people, and the credentials, each organization had its quota of people. So there was always a chairman of the committee or the credentials committee to see that nobody overstepped their percentage representation. And that year I was chosen to do it. So I did it, and Chaim Herzog was the main speaker. So in the back of the hall we were sitting together having coffee. And I went to see his son, Yitzhak Herzog, who's now chairman of the Jewish Agency, who'd just come back from South Africa. And he wrote me a note, very nice complimentary note, to say that I was revered in South Africa. And he said he'd like to meet with me. So I went to meet with him, and I took him the picture, and he was incredibly impressed. And he gave me a book on his grandfather, Yitzhak.
It was Chief Rabbi.
Chief Rabbi, Yitzhak Halevi Herzog. I have the book here, and he gave me the book in exchange. So we had a very personal visit, which was very movable, a very moving visit that I had with him. And of course, Yitzhak Herzog, I see him all the time because I attend the agency meetings 3 times a year, and we meet.
And so, were you ever tempted to go into Israeli politics?
I don't know if I was tempted. I had a job, and I was fully occupied in my job, and telling everybody that I'm not running for parliament enabled me to communicate with all of them. If I would have said that I'm ready to run for parliament, I would have had some opposition, without a doubt, because that's the way it works here in Israel. The fact of the matter is that excuse me, I realized at that stage, today it's different, but in that stage, as an Oleh Chadash, you had a very little chance of getting into the government or getting into parliament. All these guys have their army friends with them, and they have a wide circle of people and support. The yeshiva boys have the yeshivot, and they're all their friends there that they have, all those who've gone through the Hesder yeshiva, other yeshivot. So it's difficult. And I realized that it wasn't worth my while at that stage. Also, I wasn't as fluent as I was later on in years in Hebrew. Had to be perfectly fluent in Hebrew. And I enjoyed my job. I had a great time. I was free. As I say, I had contact with everybody. So I had no problems. I had no, Baruch Hashem, no enemies. And nobody thought that I was taking over their job. So I was free.
And sorry, can I just ask, looking back, okay, how you see how now today Mizrahi is it's an incredible organization, and it's got such wide representation all over the world. And Doron Peretz he's taken over not taken over your position, but he followed on, and he's doing a remarkable job. That you started, that you created in a way.
Right.
It must give you a lot of satisfaction to see how you built up this organization into such an amazing and important and vital movement that it is.
Baruch Hashem, Les, as you say, first of all, I'm very grateful to Les Glassman for doing this movie. Thank you you're incredible. I know you travel all over the world, and you made unbelievable movies. Congratulations, and you should only have strength to carry on. So that's Les Glassman. I was one of the people who recommended Rabbi Peretz for the job. I visited him a number of times in South Africa. He went for originally 2 years, stayed for 13 years, and I told him it's time to come home. So I was one of the people who recommended. I reached the age of 17 when I wanted to retire. Instead of 67, they kept me on till 70. And even now, I'm still working at Mizrahi. They've signed me for another 5 years.
Wow.
So Baruch Hashem, I'm still involved. But Rabbi Perez certainly has taken the Mizrahi to new heights. He's an incredible guy, unbelievable energy, and he's got a great team of guys helping him. He's done incredible work. The Mizrahi is today one of the outstanding organizations in the world. Very influential, certainly in the religious world, in the educational field, many other projects, and he's doing and has done a great job. I'm happy to say that when I came into Mizrahi, as I said, we had 1,600,000 shekel debt in those days.
Wow.
Can you imagine what it's worth today? When Rabbi Perez took over, we had a balanced balance sheet. So he got a slightly better movement than I had when I started with it. And he could start, get up and run straight away, which he's done. Congratulations to him. And as I say, the people around him have helped him. It's an incredible situation when you look at it, to see that everybody's so ready to help and to lend a hand and to be involved and to be committed. It's amazing. It's amazing. Our people are unbelievable from all over the world. And they give us their support, and they give us their time and effort in helping to do what we have to do, running activities and being ready, mamash, being ready to do whatever they can to ensure that the movement is strong and active and operative, and to ensure that we're spreading the word of the religious Zionist movement throughout the world. Very important.
And so also with Telfed, it's become today a very, very important organization that helps so many olim, not only from South Africa, from Australia and England, and even Holland, they've combined, and they asked Telfed for advice and support.
Correct. When I was chairman of Telfed, we had an organization called the Olim Association Organization. That doesn't exist anymore today. But Telfed was a very prominent part of that organization. And we were always the ones that were very, very much settled, even compared to the AACI, the American Aliyah Olim Association, American Canadians Association. Today they're doing very well, kol hakavod to them. Their Mankal has put them on the map again and started good activities. But as Les said, the South African Zionist Federation is solid, doing an unbelievable amount of work, helping Olim, helping South Africans. We were the first organization and the only one to build our own buildings. We have 5 buildings that are rental housing buildings, and one is an office block. We have an office in one of our buildings, and these buildings offer rental to South Africans coming on Aliyah at a cheaper rate, look after them, and give them an initial start in Israel. And then also because of that, the agency has asked us to take over Olim from other countries. So we deal with Australian Aliyah, we deal with Ethiopian Aliyah, we're helping the Ethiopians in a big way. We dealt with Russian Aliyah in my day. It was a very big commitment. We had to raise a lot of money to help the Russian Olim, and we did a great job in helping the Russian Olim. Holland, as you say, and taking over various other countries. They look to us, England, the English Aliyah. We've really handling most of the Aliyah from the Western world.
Australia as well.
And Australia, I mentioned Australia. We're having most of the Aliyah from the rest of the world today. And they're doing a great job. They have a lot of activities, they have a lot of functions, they take care of people. They have what's called the PRUS program, where students get their annual bursary, but they have to devote a few hours a week to go and visit single old people and help them with anything.
Community,
yes, help them to read, help to read them stories, help them to make coffee, do whatever they want to do. And each year more and more people volunteer for this activity, which is incredible. And they have a loan society. They have a very big budget today, the South African Jewish community, Telfed, and it's great. It's actually a great organization.
And Sally, can I ask you, what message would you give for the South African Jewish community?
Before I come to that, just let me tell you that we were the only organization that with the Gerush, of the Gush Katif people.
With the expulsion.
The expulsion of the Gush Katif people, together with Kurt Rothschild and Eliezer Shefer, Zichrono Livracha. At that stage, we decided to get involved. Nobody realized, if you recall, the expulsion of the Gush Katif people took place in August 2005. And nobody realized all their stuff were in containers. And nobody at that stage, it was such a hair-raising, such a catastrophic event that nobody really cared about anything else except survival at that stage and finding a place where to live and doing. They were mostly in hotels for weeks on end. And the kids were going to school in 2 weeks' time and they didn't have equipment. It was all stored in the containers. So we got together, we raised a lot of money, and we gave out 1,600 kits to kids with a knapsack, bag, writing material, and various school activities, rulers and all that type of stuff. We went to all these centers where the communities were living, and we distributed these bags to the kids. That was the first thing. The second thing we did was a few weeks later was Sukkot. And all their Sukkot were in the containers. Nobody saved, they couldn't save, they couldn't take anything with them. They just took their clothes and basic necessities with them. So after that stage, I phoned Mr. Kurt Rothschild and I told him, I said, listen, we've got to do something. These guys are there, they don't have Sukkot. The government's not going to give them Sukkot. What do we do? So he asked me what we're talking about. I said, we're talking about $90,000, which I need yesterday, if we're going to give them Sukkot, because Sukkot was just, I think at that stage, a week away. He said, all right, give me a few hours and I'll come back to you. He came back to me in 2 hours and said, go ahead, buy the Sukkot. So we went around with trucks, massive trucks, to all the areas where they lived, whether it was in Ariel, whether it was in Chalutza, whether it was in the hotels, whether it was Yad Binyamin, where all the people who were expelled from Gush Katif were living at that stage, and we gave them free Sukkot. I mean, we went there with massive trucks. You can imagine 500, I think we distributed over 600 or 700 Sukkot, closer to 700 Sukkot to all the people. You can imagine what that takes, with the poles, with the schach, with everything, a complete sukkah we gave them, and that was part of our activity that we did in those days. And also for Hanukkah as well, yes, which was much later nevertheless we decided that was much cheaper, I must say, to distribute Hanukkah candles and Chanukiot to all of them as well, very nice Chanukiot, which we did as well to all the families. And that was our obligation and activity that we did to help the Gush Katif people.
To the soldiers.
We have an activity today with World Mizrahi that I started and has now been going on, I think, for 8 or 9 years. There are 3 organizations, the Young Israel, us, and the Lone Soldiers Association, excuse me, that distribute Mishloach Manot to the soldiers. We distribute 10,000 Mishloach Manot every year. But what we did was we decided to go to the outlying areas. And for me, it was an experience to go there and see these bases. I never knew they existed. Some of the bases live in underground tunnels because of the security and because of the activities that they do. And we went there, the center of the country, the people they're well taken care of. But these outlying areas, the soldiers are so grateful that it is unbelievable. You can't imagine how the thanks that we get. We also get letters writing to them from the kids at school to say how they appreciate them, thank them for doing their job also. So that's a big activity that we have. And in distributing these Mishloach Manot, 1 year we had a red alert at one of the army bases where we were. So we all had to run into air raid shelters. What happens is, in each place we go to the various, as I said, various bases. But in one base they gather a lot of the soldiers, about 300-400 soldiers, and have a Purim activity. Of course, after that we give out the Mishloach Manot, and that's a great event. So this was, the soldiers were all there, and unknown to us, the commander of the base stood up and said, quietly and without rush, everybody up and into air raid shelters. We didn't hear because we had music and everything was playing for Purim. So we didn't hear the sirens and the red alert, but he did, and then all of a sudden, around me, everybody's getting up and we're moving. So I just asked someone what's it. He said, there's a red alert to air raid shelter. So we just followed the soldiers. I didn't know where the air raid shelters were. We followed the soldiers, and it was quite funny. We were in the air raid shelter for an hour and a half. In my case, I was there with 60 soldiers in this air raid shelter. And what did the soldiers do? They took all the mishloach manot and started eating them. So it was it was really great. As soon as the red alert was over, the commander of the base came to us. They didn't carry on with the concert. He said, listen, I suggest they get on your bus and get out of here, because we don't know what's going to happen. So we all quickly got on the bus and left. And that was just one of the events that we experienced.
Okay, he didn't speak about his garin, the garin in Efrat and Alanshford.
I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Did you?
So-
okay.
So your message for...
I just want to mention that once Gita's mentioned to me that the garin that we started in Alon Shvut primarily, we actually were the ones who started Alon Shvut, although Moshka and Rabbi Riskin were behind it. I went to Rabbi Riskin in America, and he asked me to speak in his shul about the garin, because he was putting a garin together. At the end of the day, Kol HaKavod to Rabbi
This was
Riskin.
at Lincoln Square.
Lincoln Square Synagogue, sure. I was a little guy at that stage, and he said, come over and come and speak to the Kehillah. So what do I say to the Kehillah? He says, tell them about Aliyah, tell them what we're going to do. So I went there, and I was his guest for Shabbat, which was great. And we were the first ones to really send our garin there. We started Alon Shvut with Stephen Levy, Raymond
He
Chazen,
was
Bernard Campbell, no, Alon Shvut. And then afterwards in Efrat as well. But at the end of the day, he had a bigger community, Rabbi Riskin, and he brought a lot of the Americans, and they developed Efrat to the stage that it is. But we have a lot of South Africans living both in Efrat and in
Alon Shvut as well.
And in Alon Shvut, absolutely. So that was the one thing.
and then
What was the other one you said?
And Shluchot.
Oh, Shluchot. Okay, so we, in 1967, we came to Shluchot as volunteers. It was a big event in South Africa. I remember going to the shul of Rabbi Pupko in that stage.
It was in Sydenham Highlands North.
Sydenham Highlands North, exactly. And we had this emergency meeting, and he said we should all go, encouraged us. But I was in the middle of accountancy. And if you didn't finish your year, they threw you out. Wits at that stage, Wits University. So we got special permission from the rector of the university to go and leave for the year and to come back next year and redo the year. Yeah, otherwise we couldn't have gone. And quite a few of us gave up our studies. I remember some of my good friends decided not to do it. In the beginning they decided okay, but in the end they said no, they want to finish their studies. But we got a letter to say that we were entitled to go, and they understand that we won't finish the year, and that we'll redo the year when we come back, provided we redo the year. If we don't come back in the next year, 1968, we won't be able to carry on at the university. So we had to give a commitment that we'll come back in 1968 and finish the course, which we did. We had 48 volunteers on Kibbutz Shluchot. Went through very merry experiences. Kibbutz Shluchot is an amazing place. It's in the Jordan Valley,
In Beit Shean.
Beit Shean, and it has a small temperature of 90 degrees in the shade. So, and we were living in Srifim. They weren't really ready for us, but we came there to help them because some of the people called up to the army and to help them with the manual work. So we used to get up at 4:30 in the morning and go and collect the hay and do certain things. Because you stopped working at 7 o'clock in the morning, it already got hot, you went to Dublin, you had breakfast. By then it was 9 o'clock, we had a lesson in Hebrew, and then we went to sleep until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, once the sun had already cooled down, we went back to work in the fields. That was the daily thing, which we were not used to at all. And at one stage, we only had these water coolers. They didn't have mazganim, they didn't have air conditioners. So we had these water coolers, and we just couldn't take it anymore. We used to wake up wet like anything from sweat. So we had a strike. And then the kibbutz decided to give us more advanced cooling systems. So we had that, and since then we've had 2 reunions, which is amazing. The first reunion was 10 years ago for the 50 years since the Six-Day War, I think, whenever it was, in 2007. And the second was 2 years ago as well. And a lot of people came. They came from, those in South Africa came, those in Israel, of course, were here. And Selwyn Franklin from South Africa, Elaine Franklin came from South Africa, and not from South Africa, from Australia, and one or two came from England. And we had almost a full attendance. Unfortunately, some of us are no longer alive, and that's a tragedy, but the rest of us were there, and we had a great Shabbat. We went there Thursday, from Thursday to Motzei Shabbat, and we had a great Shabbat with them. And we've done it twice now, and we're going to do it a third time, please God. But it shows you that everybody came.
It's wonderful.
The most amazing thing, yeah. So that was also part of our experience.
So
when I left Mizrahi,
show the back of it, show the front of it.
I decided, they decided that I'd leave, where I handed in my resignation, coming to retirement age, or passing already the retirement age, and the Mizrahi gave me an enormous present. They gave me a Sefer Torah in my honor. The Sefer Torah today is in one of the Gush Katif settlements in the south, and B'nai Netzarim, that's where it is. But this is still my Sefer Torah. It's in my name, and here's the inscription.
That's fantastic.
And that was an amazing
that's
gift.
Really amazing.
Yeah, I didn't expect it. That was an amazing gift from the Mizrahi organization on my retirement. Also, what I instituted was with the Halperin brothers, mainly Ari Halperin, Zichrono Lebracha, and Sam Halperin, the owners of the Ramada Hotel. We used to have an annual Sukkot luncheon that was free. They subsidized it, they paid for it. And originally we started, was the most incredible thing. We started with Dr. Burg and Ari Halperin. We started with 15 people. Ari Halperin, the owner, invited us for lunch. So there were 6. The first year there were 6 of us. Second year there were 15 of us. But what was amazing about that in the small circle was to listen to Ari and Dr. Burg talking in Hebrew. Ari was saved. He was in Auschwitz, and him and his brother were both in Auschwitz, and they were saved. They managed to escape, which is amazing story. Landed up in Germany, in Bayreuth, one of the small towns in Germany, and then from there went to America and established this massive business that they have in New Jersey. They're building thousands and thousands of houses. And by the way, during the Intifada and everything, when all the hotels were cutting back on staff, some closed down, they suggested to Ari Halperin and Sam that they also close down for 6 months and save the money. He got so upset, Ari, he shouted at the directorate of the hotel and said, "Don't talk to me about that again. We're not closing, and if it costs us money, it costs us money."
Wow.
He sent $150,000 a month to Israel
didn't fire any staff.
to keep the hotel going. $150,000 a month he sent, which was amazing for a few months. Today, Baruch Hashem, the hotel is doing exceptionally well, and unfortunately they passed on. But the Sukkot dinner became one of the main functions of the religious Zionist movement in Israel. All the parliamentarians attended, the ministers attended, the chief rabbis attended always. The last dinner that we had 400 and nearly 500 people. Every year it grew and grew and grew, and became more attractive and more attractive. And as I say, in the end, it was 400, 500 people we had at this Sukkot luncheon, which was incredible. Unfortunately, today they've passed on, both Ari and Sam, and the luncheon no longer takes place. But there are very many other activities.
Wow. So behind every great man is his wife. And Gita, what can you mention? Okay, but Gita, you've been so supportive, Sally, through the years.
It's been a busy life.
But a rewarding.
A busy life.
Wow.
I get the nachas that from Soli, what he does, from all his activities.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And Sally, okay, I know it's a bit of a hard one, but your message to the South African Jewish community, your advice.
Okay. First of all, just let me say that I was very sick actually on life support a year ago, And thank God, with the help of Gita and my daughter, I managed to come through. It was a very difficult period. I was unconscious in a coma for 3 weeks, and I was unconscious in the ICU unit for 5 weeks. And our children came every day. My 2 sons came to put on tefillin with me every morning, while I was unconscious. And Gita still helps me now. I still have a tracheostomy, but thank God I'm on my feet and I'm able to go back to work for a few hours a day, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. So my message to the South African community is to stay strong, to keep the community going, to have unity. The most important thing is unity. I'd encourage them all to come on Aliyah. Israel is thriving. Israel is incredible. To live in Israel today is just unbelievable when you see what's going on here. From all statistics, we're in the top of everything, whether it's on the stock exchange, whether it's with certainly with high tech and development and everything. Israel's leading the field, and it's really amazing. Even in the medical field today, we're doing discoveries. Tiny little Israel has a team called the First Aid, where if a country has an earthquake, God forbid, or tornadoes or things like that, we send help. Our little country. In Thailand with Phuket, where they had that massive tsunami, Israel was the first country to put up a hospital. We put up tents, we put up a hospital, started treating people. Even CNN gave us credit for that, so that says something. She couldn't believe her eyes. She says, when you take all the great countries of the world, the United States, England, wherever else, France, the only country, this tiny little country, Israel, has massive tents, massive equipment, all equipment that we needed. So I'd encourage you to come on Aliyah. It's a little bit difficult in the beginning, but once you settle in, it's great. You can make a living here, you can do very well here. And I wish.
Here we have a letter from the Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Shamir, and it's dated February the 20th, 1989. And Sadi, this is addressed to you. If you can read what...
Yes, this is as Chairman of the Zionist Federation, community, for your congratulations on my forming a unity government. I chose the path of a government of unity because of the grave problems that we face in the international arena and because of the internal different divisions of the Jewish people. Both these matters demand a united leadership. We expect the Jewish communities around the world to stand with Israel in solidarity and maximum support. Yours sincerely, Yitzhak Shamir.
And it was addressed to you?
And addressed to me as Chairman of the South African Zionist Federation. I visited him a number of times and I knew him well, and he wrote to me. I have another letter where he wrote that he's lifting the sanctions against the South African government because of the Jewish community, and Israel was the first country to do so.
Wow. And this is the letter. Okay. So Sadi, I just want to thank you. First of all, you are an inspiration. You are really somebody that you've achieved so much, and you are so modest, and you're a walking miracle, first of all. And we just want to wish you, all of us, and I know Gita, when Soli was in hospital, we were sending WhatsApp and SMSs, and all over the world, people from all over were so concerned. And to see you sitting today, it's a miracle. You really are a miracle.
Thanks very much, appreciate it.
So we just wish you and your family and your dear wife and all the mazel and bracha that you so deserve. You've dedicated your life for the Jewish people, really.
Yeah.
And you've achieved so much, and you unified everybody. You are somebody we can all look up to, a real icon.
Thanks very much, appreciate
an inspiration for all of us. You should just be well and happy, and
amen. Thanks
all
very
of us
much
blessings.